The value of bikes stolen each year runs into the billions. In the United States alone, over 175,000 bikes are reported stolen each year. The real figure, probably even higher. 90% of them are never found. When a bike of mine was stolen, I was left angry, frustrated, and gutted. I never got it back either. Bike theft sucks. In this video, we're going to investigate it. I'm going to have another bike stolen, but this time on purpose. We've identified a bike theft hotspot, and we're going to leave this bait bike covered in trackers to see what happens to it. How long will it take to get stolen? Where will it go when it is? And could we potentially get it back? It feels really quite wrong, if I'm honest. It's like leaving a small animal out. It's like a sacrifice to the gods. Poor Pinarello. I'm also going to speak to some people with some wild experiences of bike theft. Bryan Hance runs the website Bike Index, which exists solely to help reunite stolen bikes with their rightful owners.
You know, they would steal a truck and they would ram it into a bike shop and they'd get away with like 50 bikes. And then we would sort of see a majority of those bikes wind up in Mexico, which was nuts.
And I'm going to speak to a guy here in the UK who had £36,000 worth of bikes stolen and then went on a mission to get them back. A mission which took him via an extraordinary sequence of events that included a team of armed security experts to Poland. It is pretty wild.
I've been awake for hours at this point. I've been mentally like I've been everywhere with it. And I feel like I'm driving through a war zone. Do you know what I mean? It was crazy.
Right, this is it. Day 0, time to get our bike stolen. I've actually got no idea how long this is going to take. And I can't even imagine who's going to do it. This area feels really safe. It's really familiar to me. Now, this is the bike that is hopefully going to go. As you can see, it's a Pinarello. It's a cracking bike. More to the point, it looks like a very good bike as well, which hopefully will attract lots of attention. It's quite old now, which is why, in part, we're happy to let it go. And also, we bought it for £500 off eBay. So, no, it wasn't stolen, just in case you're wondering. Now, we've got 2 trackers on here. So we've got an AirTag, which I'm not 100% convinced is going to work, because if the thief has an iPhone, then they're going to know that this has got an AirTag. This feels so wrong. There you go. There it goes. But that also might then help us get it back, because if they do know there's an AirTag in here, there's no way they're getting it out. And then we've also got a tile as a backup. So we'll have to see about that. But both seem to be working fine. So we better go do it. So the bike rack we've identified is just over there on that side street. It seems crazy that anyone would be brazen enough to nick a bike from there, because there's so many people overlooking it. But we're going to do that too, right? So our stakeout, it's going to be from a first floor window. We've got a car parked, and then also there's a cafe almost literally opposite. So to do it properly, I'm going to go buy coffee and donuts. I think that's how you do stakeouts, right? We've got hold of the crappiest lock of all time for this job. I think a stiff breeze might break it, but anyway, don't let me forget, 21:43, okay? The first thing I want to know is who is stealing bikes? Well, if ever there was an expert to tell us, it's Bryan Hance. He has spent over 20 years working to try and track and recover stolen bikes, including co-founding Bike Index.
The vast majority of the ones that we see here will stay within like 50 miles. They don't, it's really low level idiots. It's really, local. It's mostly drug addicts. It's mostly people that are stealing other stuff. They typically will either sell it on online marketplaces, which is super common, or they'll take it, like we have, pawn shops here. They can get rid of it there, or they'll take it to a more organized fence, who will, like, we've seen people here. There've been houses where like you just show up at this house with anything from guns to gold to jewelry to drugs to bikes, whatever, and they literally just hand you drugs. Like there's no money. There's no money. It's just like, and then those guys are the ones who are sort of running a bigger fencing operation, and they might be the ones who, like, you know, they separate all the electronics and it goes to one guy, or they separate out all the gold and it goes to a different guy. And if you have bikes, it goes to another guy, and it's kind of that guy's shtick to put everything in a truck and collect it and move it. It was mostly during the pandemic. Bikes were getting targeted more by professional thieves because everybody wanted bikes and nobody could get bikes. You know, it was the craziest thing about the pandemic was that every single bike shop sold out of bikes in like the first month. So as a object of desire, thieves were like, oh, let's rob these now. Like, these are so great. Like, and that's when we started seeing, like, you know, they would steal a truck and they would ram it into a bike shop and they'd get away with like 50 bikes. And then we would sort of see a majority of those bikes wind up in Mexico, which was nuts.
Have you got a sense of who is buying stolen bikes if they end up in the same city or the neighboring city? Like, you're saying, you know, online marketplaces. When I had a bike stolen a couple of years back, I lost 6 months to Facebook Marketplace, eBay, and Gumtree. But I still wonder where that bike is now.
Yeah, I mean, the market here is, you know, it's Facebook, and it's this app called OfferUp, which is just kind of like Craigslist or Gumtree, but they have an app, and it's there's a certain percentage of people who are just sort of like, maybe 30 to 50% cognizant of like, I'm getting a $5,000 bike for $1,000. Lucky me, you know, like, and then there's, I don't know if you're familiar with like the flipper culture. There's this whole thing on like, there's this, it's on Reddit, and it's basically people who are sort of amateur hustlers and they buy low and sell high. And there's all these things like, you know, Pokemon cards are suddenly super hot. So they go to like, they find an online store that sells this Pokemon thing for $20, but they realize they can sell it for $40 on like a marketplace or something. And it sucks because the flipper people kind of discovered bikes. And in Seattle in particular, there's like this one 15-year-old kid that one of the bike hunters has been banging on for like months, and she's had to like talk to his parents and stuff because he's basically just buying bikes from crackheads. Full knowledge, you know, this is a goddamn drug addict. But I bought this $300 bike from this guy, and I can sell it for $3,000. And there's like 4 or 5 stolen. And he's like, well, I'm a flipper. It's like, well, you're not a flipper, dude. You're opportunistic. And this is the 5th bike we've caught you with. Like, don't do this again.
It's quite hard doing stakeouts. Got to concentrate. They're pissing around on social media. Although I've got to pretend to piss around on social media, just in case anyone is looking at me thinking that guy's on a stakeout. Okay, we have been here a couple of hours now. I think they're getting a little annoyed that I've only had one Americano so far.
We spoke to the barista in the cafe, which incidentally is not suitable for a stakeout because it doesn't sell donuts. But he said that they were aware of 1 or 2 bikes per week getting stolen from the rack that ours was locked to. Typically, he said, a group of young lads arrive on electric motorbikes, surround a bike, and then just a few seconds later, they disperse with one of them riding off on it. The fact is, though, today was not our lucky day.
Gonna call it. No one wants to steal our bike today. I mean, that's quite good in a way, isn't it, really? Yeah, we haven't had a bike stolen. Brilliant.
We returned to the cafe for a second and a third time, but the reality dawned on us. There was a huge element of luck in this. We could leave this bike outside for 30 seconds and it could be stolen. Or we could leave it unlocked all day and it could still be there at the end. We needed to try a different tack. The coffee bill was getting a little bit high. We were spending quite a lot of time there, so we reverted to plan B, which is to simply lock the bike, leave it, but with a camera pointed at it, okay? So it's gonna go now. I just don't know when, but we will record the moment up there. I expected the bike to go quickly, but it didn't. It took ages, not just one day, but several. Again, making me think just how much luck comes into this. Either that, or in fact, whether organised thieves know the value of bikes and despite appearances, could recognise that this one, with its rim brakes and mechanical gears, was not actually worth a huge amount of money. But eventually, just checked in. It's 7:15 in the morning. It's become something of an obsession. And the bike has gone. It's gone. Now I just fired up the tracker. Just checked in with my AirTag. And that has not updated for 10 hours and it's still showing the bike was where we left it. That's not supposed to happen. Right, what about the tile? Last updated yesterday. Oh, bloody hell, in exactly the same place. Okay, the bike has gone dark. It's been stolen and it's gone dark. We went through our footage and discovered the exact moment the bike was stolen. 6:10 a.m. on a Monday morning. It took 28 seconds. There he is then, our thief. I don't know why I expected the bike to be stolen in the middle of the night, not at 6 in the morning, but there it is. I think judging by the look of him, it is a bloke, maybe 6 foot tall, wearing sportswear, but I'm not entirely sure that walk is particularly sporty. We've thought long and hard about whether to report the theft to the police now. On the one hand, we absolutely should, because it is a crime. On the other hand, we wanted the bike to be stolen, and given how wildly overstretched the police are at the moment, it doesn't feel appropriate to do so. And actually, other than this grainy footage, we've got nothing to give them at the minute because both of the trackers have failed to update. So I know people use AirTags to track stolen goods all the time, but it's clearly not fail-safe. It's currently saying that it was last seen precisely where we left the bike at 8:46 p.m. yesterday. I don't know quite what's happened, genuinely. I don't think you could get the AirTag out the bike unless you remove the bottom bracket. And even then, I don't know how they would know the AirTag was in there. Yeah, Apple AirTags alert you if you're being tracked by one, but also surely it would update on here as well. So yeah, the bike's vanished. I've been searching on eBay, Marketplace, and Gumtree, but I cannot find it. And this is the wormhole that I got stuck in when I had my own bike stolen. It's hard to assume that a bike is stolen for personal use. As Bryan said earlier, someone is likely to flip it. The question is, how? Which is why I ended up checking 3 times a day, every day, for months in search of mine. But nothing. One person who knows all about this is Damian Groves, whose unrelenting desire to get his bikes back sent him on one of the wildest missions I have ever heard.
I'm Damian, and I had 36 grand's worth of bikes stolen, and I had to recover them myself. would have been August 2023. Me and my partner Emily were away racing at the National Enduro Round up at A Forest. And I just got the phone call from my mum. She was obviously distraught. They've gotten up and the garage had been broken into and the rest of our bikes had been taken, sort of thing. So the bikes of mine that were stolen were all Niner bikes, a RIP 9 Audio, a WFO Audio, another WFO that was like a unique build that was a park bike, and a Jet 9 Audio that had also been part of a dream build. How did they get in? Because naively I thought that like this hardwood door with a 5-lever mortise lock that opens outwards is safe. And in reality they'd opened it like it wasn't locked. They'd literally just jammed a crowbar in and squashed the frame and flexed the door enough for the latch to just lift out of the lock. Doors open. And that was that, you know, like, I wouldn't say I feel embarrassed, but like, it was naive at best. My best friend had been burgled 12 months previous for his bike, and he'd managed to retrieve it through this mutual friend. So I phoned this mutual friend and explained, and he was like, right, give me 20 minutes. Rings me back and says, my connection knows who's stolen your bikes, but wants nothing to do with it. He's like, normally he would go and buy them back, but he wants to stay well out of this. It's got trouble written all over it. Yeah. But I'll give you the names. Yeah, long story short, there was nothing we could really do with these names. Like police had said, circumstantial, can't do anything with that. Even though those people are known to us for crimes like this, just because you say the names doesn't mean we can go and raid their house. That sort of goes on for like 3 weeks, maybe a month. They decided like, right, we're not getting them back, so we're just gonna make them too hot to handle. Posted them on Instagram. Got like, say, the reach, I can't remember the exact figures, but you know, you see it on your profile and stuff. It was like millions, it went global, you know. Then that night, I basically got a message from like a new account, no followers. It only followed me and my partner, Emily. And it's messaged us both. And they essentially just extorted us for the money. They were like, oh, drop £1,000 here in this location and we'll leave the bikes there. So I negotiated down to £300 for one bike. Leaves the £300. It didn't come to any fruition. I was just ripped off for another 300. Anyway, so didn't get the bikes back. Couldn't sleep that night. I was just sort of really bent out of shape over it at this point. I literally just Googled private investigator and it took me to this website where you put your case on there and then these investigators basically, they contact you or, you know, not bid, but try and get the job basically. And I'm driving home from work and I get a phone call basically, and it was this guy from Fort Brave, and he was like, he asked a few questions and was like, I reckon I can help you out.
Hey, Si, how you doing?
Yeah, good mate. Sorry, my phone looked on.
No worries. Si, what happened to that Pinarello that you had locked up outside the office the other day as an experiment?
It got nicked.
Do you want to know where it is?
Yeah.
Bath High Street, right behind me.
We found her.
No way.
It's had Pinarello scratched off it. You're on loudspeaker. We are recording this for your video, but it's in a shop entrance in the House of Tweed in Bath High Street.
It is it. It's definitely it. I've seen it, dude.
It's 100% it, buddy.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Black and white one. I can see it.
Okay. I don't know what to do, actually.
Cannot believe that the bike has been found and so close as well to where it was stolen from. I mean, awful to see where it's ended up. Even worse to see the conditions that the poor person who's stolen the bike is currently in as well. My frustration now is that not only am I not close to the bike, I'm not even in the same country as the bike, as you could probably tell. I've been checking the trackers now, still nothing from the AirTag, but the tile, interestingly, has updated. So that is showing the exact location, precisely where Rich is currently. But I'm completely powerless to do anything about it now.
Unfortunately, by the time that I had got back into Bath, the bike had moved again. There was no update from the trackers. It was lost.
First, it was just a bit of surveillance with the names I'd got. Didn't really come to anything. Then I paid for like an image search to try and find my bikes on the internet somewhere that advertised on like the dark web and all this sort of stuff. Probably £1,500 deep at this point. So I was literally about to kind of call time on it and say like enough's enough. And then I got a message from a lad on Instagram and he was like, oh, I think I found one of your bikes. They're on this website that's known for selling stolen stuff in Europe. Here's the link. So I follows this link and I'm like, what the hell? This guy's got all my bikes plus all sorts of other bikes, you know, all in the same place. So I gives that to the private investigator. They manage to do their thing. They figure out who he is, where he lives, his work address, his inside leg measurement, basically. We need to find out where the background of these pictures of the bikes. We need to attach that to one of these addresses we know for him. So he goes there, puts a drone in the sky, matches the back garden with the background of the advert for my bikes. Like, clear as day, it was unarguable. You know, I could show you some of these pictures. It was just obvious, this guy, you know, my bikes had clearly been advertised for sale in Poland, but at this address. So I gives this to the police as well, and both them and us tried to buy the bike here, and we're like, oh, can you ship it back to the UK? Not knowing if it was still there or it had gone by this point. And the seller was like, no, these can only be sold in Poland. I think I was just fobbed off because there's just bigger crimes to deal with in Leicester, basically. So we got some legal advice to make sure what we're doing wasn't like illegal levels of blackmail, basically. Put all the information in, various documents, emails, and just sent it out to like family addresses, all sorts of stuff. This guy panics, rings the PI up and's like, you can have them. I want, just stop. No more, just stop. I don't know if, you know, these bikes. So obviously started saying he'd bought them on a pallet and didn't know, he'd been on stolenbikes.com and they weren't on there and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, why wouldn't you sell them in the UK then? Because you're telling me they're only halfway to Poland now. They've only left England like yesterday. He was willing to hand them back at this point for us to stop. But the options were either pick them up from this location in Poland the next day or wait till he got back to Leicester on the Monday. And I didn't want to give him that time to figure out how to get out of it, basically. When I was given the original option of Leicester on Monday or Poland tomorrow, I'd also been said, like, this situation where you have to pay for a team of... it makes it sound a bit James Bond, and it feels a bit that way, but, like, it is a team of specially trained men who deal with this sort of thing, basically. I'm sure there's women as well, but specially trained people who deal with this sort of thing. So I paid for like a team, literally 6 men in black, in like an armoured car, fully like weaponed up the lot, to go and meet these other 2 people, not even the guy we were talking to on text messages, these other 2 people, in a public area. They were then led to an industrial estate. There was a bit of back and forth before eventually it was like, just give us what we've come for. And they opened these doors and there were my bikes. You know, and I've watched it all on a live feed sort of thing from like a chest cam. Yeah, and I'm like, in the living room, like watching, like sweating. You know, like, you can imagine the anxiety of it all, can't you? And it was probably less than 20 minutes, a short amount of time later, I'm like, in Poland, how do we get them back from there now? So I'm looking for 2 flights. But then, like, the nearest flight was still a long drive, so I'd need a rental, and it was just going to cost, like, another $3,000, basically. So the cheapest option was to just drive there. So at the time I was working with, the lad I was working with at the time, he was, like, pushing me. He was like, oh, just book the thing, you know, take me home, give me half an hour of a shower, get me stuff, I'll come with you. And I hummed and hawed, and then basically by about 5 o'clock that night, we'd gone home, I dropped him off, and I was like, right, I've booked the crossing, the tunnel for, I think it was for midnight. We just drove all the way. But we eventually get off this motorway in Poland, and obviously a couple of country lanes, then you enter the city. It must have just been all construction, but there's like half torn down buildings, roads are all dug up. And like, again, not to like lay it on thick, but I've been awake for hours at this point. I've been mentally, like, I've been everywhere with it. And I'm like, I feel like I'm driving through a war zone. Do you know what I mean? It was crazy. Gets to the middle of town, there's loads of people, been given this location outside like some sketchy nightclub to wait. Eventually, this guy did appear, and sort of shiftily appear, and he just, you know, was like, oh, introduced himself, shook his hand, and then he took us through the middle of town, like loads of people, and down an alleyway and through like a gated pen, like a pin pad gate, basically, and then another pin pad into this house. And in between that, I'd had a phone call from the PI just to make sure it was all going okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm walking, he's taking me to him now. Opens this door to the house, bikes are there, and I'm like, my head's kind of exploded at this point, because it's like, oh, all of this, and they're finally here again, you know. So he wheels them back to the van. I can't get the front wheels off and in the van quick enough, obviously, because I'm like paranoid now. I'm thinking somebody's gonna be following me, whatever. And we just, you know, got it in, shook hands with this guy again, and got it, you know, got home, sort of thing.
On the one hand, there's part of me that's a little bit annoyed that our bike was stolen and then moved a few hundred meters away and has met this sort of crushingly depressing end. Although, as I said, it has now since disappeared again. On the other hand, though, over the couple of months that we've been piecing this video together, I do feel like I've learned a lot. Firstly, and what struck me most, is how much luck, or rather bad luck, plays its part in bike theft. As I said earlier, if you leave your bike for a second in the wrong place at the wrong time, it'll be gone. But equally, you might find that it won't. Secondly, I can't help but think the value of your bike plays a real part here. Not what you paid for it, but its desirability to thieves. And at the moment, what seems to be selling secondhand are extremely high-value bikes, be that a posh road bike stolen to order or an e-bike. But on the flip side of this, I can't help but feel emboldened by our experiences here, and that actually a really good lock paired with a low-value bike is something that you can absolutely lock up and leave around town. And thirdly, I don't think that trusting trackers is a particularly good idea. Yes, we've seen stories in the media of people getting their bikes back thanks to AirTags, but certainly my experience here has not been that way. They're not fail-safe, are they? Basically, you can't rely on one to help get your bike back. I think prevention is much better, although clearly you can do both. And as for our Pinarello, we still can't find it. We are checking Marketplace and Gumtree to see if it turns up. We're fairly sure that it has not been stolen by a criminal mastermind who'll be trafficking it out of the country. Hopefully at some point it'll be flipped so we can pounce on it. We will also be reporting it missing, because the reality is that there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of unclaimed bikes that have been recovered by the police, but no one comes to get them back. When we set out to make this video, I wasn't sure how it was going to end, and I certainly wasn't prepared for this, but perhaps I should have been, because this is the tragic reality of much of the low-level crime that we face. It's carried out by people on the fringes of society, abandoned by the system, many of whom are addicts. In fact, the CSJ estimates that here in the UK, between 50 and 70% of all acquisitive crime is drug-related. In the US, the stats are similar, if not higher. And we know that it's beyond the scope of the criminal justice system to really do anything about this. What we do instead, well, that is beyond the scope of this video, that's for sure. Look after your bikes, folks. Do what you can to keep them safe. Never take them for granted. And never, ever, ever buy a bike that looks too good to be true.
Remember the code? Didn't think I'd need to remember the code. 2143.
It's not 2143. Yeah, it is. I was doing it on the wrong bit.